Hi! Today I wanted to talk about documentaries. I really like documentaries. I know I've talked about TV a little bit on my channel, but never movies, and one of my favorite types of movies is documentaries. I would even say that documentaries is a recent addition to the types of movies I watch. I only started watching maybe about 5 years ago, and I think this is partly because there was a couple of documentaries I watched that changed my life, and I wanted to talk about those, how they changed my life, and why they have helped spark my interest and educate myself about certain values that I have that are really important to me now that before watching these were not so important. And the first one that I have to talk about because it made the largest change in my life is Cowspiracy. I think all of the documentaries I'm going to mention today are on Netflix, including Cowspiracy. This documentary was well filmed, well written. It's a good story. It takes you along an interesting path. It feels like a drama, and some have said that this documentary is exaggerated. And I think part of the way that it's filmed with like dramatic music, and there are certain parts of the movie that feel perhaps more dramatic because of the way they film it and the sound and lighting and things like that.
And one of the largest industries on the planet with the biggest environmental impact, trying to keep us in the dark about how it's operating.
The overall message of the documentary is not exaggerated, and that is the fact that the animal agriculture industry is the most destructive industry on the planet when it comes to hurting the environment.
When you consider the devastation it's having on our planet as well as the oceans.
And we're in the middle of the largest mass extinction of species in 65 million years.
And this is what's so magical about the documentary Cowspiracy, is that I didn't consider myself an environmentalist at all. I cared about the environment just as much as anyone else I knew, which was not very much. About all I did was recycle, and I knew plastic bags were bad, so I picked paper at the grocery store. But I just didn't give it more thought beyond that. And I did have one vegetarian friend in high school, but she just never talked about it. And I don't think I ever asked. So I had never given thought to the animal agriculture industry or the environment in depth until watching this documentary. And it was so powerful and engaging that by the end of the documentary, I felt that I cared deeply about the planet and needed to act immediately to do what I could to help. And that's pretty special and rare for a movie to affect you that strongly. After watching that movie, I did cut out red meat, and after about a month of that, I cut out all meat. Shortly after that, I cut out eggs and dairy and any last remaining things to switch to a totally vegan, plant-based diet. And it was largely because of that documentary making me feel like I needed to make a change. And this is how I feel about a lot of documentaries and just educational content in general. Once you know better, do better. And that was my approach to watching this documentary and the other ones I'm going to mention as well. I wasn't educated on the practices of animal agriculture and how harmful they were to our planet, but once I knew, I decided I was going to do better. Another documentary that I really enjoyed and also kind of helped me along in a similar environmental fashion was The True Cost, which is a documentary about fast fashion. And I definitely used to be a big partaker in specifically H&M. I still own many clothes from H&M that I've had for years. It was like my favorite store for a long time because everything was so cheap, and I like the look of the clothes as well. But I didn't know very much about fast fashion I feel like this topic has only gained traction in mass media in recent years.
Consumers in the rich world would get cheaper goods, and people in the poorer parts of the world would get jobs, and that those jobs would give them an opportunity to work their way out of poverty.
And this documentary is a good introduction if you're not very familiar with the effects of fast fashion. I knew it was bad, but I didn't have something that documentaries provide, which is proof, and they make you see what you're supporting and see the negative effects. Similar to Cowspiracy, The True Cost shows the people who are working in the fast fashion industry being treated horribly, and it is motivation to make a change in your life and cut out fast fashion, which I have now.
When everything is concentrated on making profits, what you see is that human rights, the environment, workers' rights get lost.
My God, we can do better than this.
I don't purchase from fast fashion brands anymore. I'm glad that I never really got into that like Zaful or Shein trend. I did buy like a couple of items from Zaful, and then shortly after was when I watched this documentary, and I knew I could not ever be making purchases from those types of companies again, especially with getting into thrifting to find ways to accumulate cheap and affordable clothing. There's no need. Thrift stores are just as affordable as fast fashion brands like H&M. This is another thing that I really like about these documentaries, is that they do pose a pretty severe problem, and it would be hard to not take it too far and scare people away with the doomsday factor of the planet is burning alive because you're eating meat or you're buying from these clothing stores. They provide a clear, actionable solution at the end of both films, which is helpful. And other documentaries that I've watched about similar topics that don't do this just end up making me feel sad and not wanting to change. Another documentary that I wanted to mention is called Minimalism. And I watched this documentary shortly after I read The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo, and both that book and the movie has a little sprinkling of like what I refer to as woo-woo shit, which is, I don't know, I get the vibe that perhaps these people might be into healing crystals or other things of the sort. But in general, I like the documentary overall. And it has a great message that really pushed me over the edge with minimalism and just not buying.
People are beginning to recognize that they've maybe been tricked.
There is no out until you become aware. You're not going to get happier by consuming more.
I never was a shopaholic or like addicted to buying things and purchasing frequently, but nowadays I shop, aside from shopping for food, I shop so infrequently, like a few times a year, to be honest. Like clothes, maybe 2 times a year, gifts for other people, but beyond that, I don't buy very much, especially outside of necessities.
This same thing that's not making us happy is also causing the degradation of our habitat.
We're going to have to give up a lot. The secret is that a lot of that we're not actually going to miss.
I really don't want to accumulate a bunch of stuff, because they point out in the movie, they say that buying things sometimes gives you that instant gratification. It makes you feel happy to get a new thing. And I realized after watching that I barely even had that. So there really was no reason for me to be purchasing useless things when it didn't even give me like a rush of a purchase hardly to begin with. So I don't know if this would be the documentary for someone who is like very into shopping and consumption, but if you're already thinking about these ideas of reducing and becoming more minimalist, buying less, buying more purposefully, this is a good documentary for you. and it definitely helped me change my habits when it comes to shopping. Nowadays, when I purchase things, I'm very intentional about making a list and only getting what's on that list. I don't just shop for fun. Shopping serves a purpose to get an item that I need. It's certainly been good for me financially, but even aside from that, it's just helped my perspective and outlook on life to see accumulation of stuff as a negative thing. A lot of times society and advertisements tries to push the idea that accumulation of stuff is the goal, and I'm glad that I never truly fell into that trap. And the last documentary that I'm going to speak of today, I just have 4. I've seen plenty of documentaries and loved many of them, but these 4 are the ones that really made me make a change. And the last one is What the Health, which is made by the same people who made Cowspiracy. And there's a lot of critique of this movie. Again, kind of in a similar way that it exaggerates, it makes it seem like meat is going to kill you if you eat it, like going to kill your health. And I think that the overall message of the movie is being overlooked by some of the details. Meat, particularly red meat and processed meat, which the movie clearly states is overall more bad for you than good.
Health organizations have become co-opted. They are taking money from the very industries who are causing the problem.
And it has been studied enough times now to be reputable and accepted that high blood pressure and cholesterol and issues with the heart, like heart disease, heart attacks, those are closely linked with red and processed meat beyond doubt now, and those are some of the top killers of people in America.
They care more about cooperation than do people.
They spend at least $138 million lobbying Congress.
These companies really have a vested interest in making sure that the public doesn't have information about their effects.
So this was another documentary that helped me change my diet. I think Cowspiracy and What the Health are a few years apart, so I already was kind of on board from Cowspiracy, although it did take me a while to go from seeing that documentary to be completely vegan. And I think within that time frame, it might have been What the Health might have come out. So that might have been the final push for me. But even if I was completely vegan by the time What the Health came out, it motivated me again to, 1, eat a healthier plant-based diet, and 2, it made me want to share it with other people. And I know it's gonna get the reputation of being a preachy vegan, but I feel like this documentary is interesting even to the average person. And they don't really talk about veganism until like the last third of the movie. They more talk about how food affects health. And it's in an interesting way that it doesn't feel like a boring science documentary. It tells a story, much like Cowspiracy. It's an interesting watch, even to someone who is not vegan and doesn't go vegan. I still think that people would enjoy watching the movie. I actually showed that documentary to my parents, and it definitely got them thinking about the benefits of a plant-based diet. And while they're not vegan, I don't think they eat the same now as they did before. So I just found it to be a very powerful film and motivated me to make a change for the better in my life. I think that's the theme with all 4 films that I mentioned in this video. They made me want to make a change so that I would be doing better for the world and for myself, and that's the kind of documentary I like. So I hope this inspires you to check out some of these if you haven't watched them before, and thanks for watching.